there's a new tokenized commodity exchange, which is built as an easy and safer way to have exposure to commodities. And so with me is Humayun Sheikh, the founder and CEO of Fetch.ai and then also Mettalex. So kind of explain, Humayun, how Fetch, Mettalex falls into Fetch, and then we'll talk a little bit more about the exchange.
Yeah, hi. Thank you, Jane. So Fetch is building the underlying technology, and we are building multiple protocols and multiple tools which you can use to actually build commercial applications on top. And Mettalex is one of those commercial applications where you can create your own instruments and you can trade your own instruments. You don't need counterparties. You are trading with a smart contract, and you can create exposure. You can hedge exposure in a decentralized exchange. You can actually buy and sell and trade the exposure without the need for a counterparty.
Okay, so the Mettalex is an exchange using Fetch's technology. So there may be other things besides an exchange that Fetch would be used for, which I know we've talked about, but this is just one application.
Yes, this is more a DeFi application, which we see a lot of people, a lot of traders, and my background in commodities. It's very difficult to actually take illiquid commodities and create any volume around it. Most of the exchanges probably won't even list such commodities in the way. It's very cumbersome. It's got very archaic method of trading. Mm-hmm. So what we're doing is we're bringing it into the DeFi space. So you could be creating new types of instruments. You could be creating new types of hedging instruments, so for risk management instruments, and you can then create the market around it. And the best bit is you don't have a centralized entity which is in control, so you don't have a counterparty risk either.
Interesting. So, well, I spent a few years at the Chicago Board of Trade. I grew up on a farm, so I get the whole kind of illiquid part of it. So, Humayun, your background is in which commodities?
I've traded in mostly metals, and hence the name Mettalex, metal exchange. But I traded mostly with iron ore, steel raw materials, and some base metals like aluminium, zinc, and copper. And so that's the background I have, and it became very apparent that there's a lot of other metals, other commodities which are thinly traded, which have no huge liquidity, and it's quite difficult to actually get an exposure or a hedge against.
Right. No, I get it. They're like those in the ag commodities too. So how would this benefit, let's say, a farmer or somebody in the industry, in the metal industry or whatever, a trader, and then and somebody who's involved in like institutional trading? Like, what benefit would Mettalex give them?
So the biggest benefit here is quite interesting, that you can create the instrument you want yourself. You don't have to rely on somebody else to do it. So you can log on and you can say, okay, I want an exposure between wheat. I want to create a spread between wheat and oil, for example. And you can take those two indices and you can create that spread. So rather than taking wheat as a separate commodity and buying a long or a short exposure on that commodity and doing the same with oil, what you can do is you can create a spread. Now, what does that do? What it does is actually your margin requirements reduce dramatically. So you don't need that huge amount of margin for two separate commodities. You're taking exposure on one spread. So your margin is down, your margin call is down, because you suddenly now have a spread where you have this upper and lower limit, where if you go beyond the floor and the cap, it will settle. And you can create your own exposure, you can create your own instrument and your own product. And then you can actually go and buy the exposure and sell the exposure, and you can actually be hedged instantly, effectively. And you trade with the smart contract, which is run by autonomous market makers. So you don't actually need the other side or the the counterparty, so which then takes away the risk of the counterparty as well.
Okay. Oh, that's fascinating. So how does somebody get started, or how can they check this out and see if this is something they'd like to explore?
So we will be launching a beta phase in October, second week of October. We are currently going to launch with roughly 12 kind of commodity spreads, which would include things like iron ore, which will include like some of the more exotic ones like cobalt, uranium, perhaps, and then some more technology oriented, like your compute cycle costs. So you can actually hedge your computational cost for a year, for 6 months, which, and again, the cost of equipment, which means you can take an exposure on a battery, for example, battery components. So you can take exposure on things which you haven't been able to till now. So we will open that beta phase, and we're inviting multiple different traders, different physical traders, commodity traders, futures traders, to come and try it out and see how they feel, and give us some feedback. So by end of October, we'll be announcing that.
Okay. And they can go to, what is the website, or how do they sign up for the beta phase?
Yeah, so the website is called Mettalex.com, and you can access it via Fetch.ai, or you can do it via Mettalex, which is METTALEX.com.
Okay. Well, that's very interesting, because like I said, I've spent some time in the commodity markets and around them, and this sounds like it's a market for things that have not been traded in the past, so that makes that more of a market. And then also it's kind of updated for the futures. You mentioned computer parts too, so it's the futures market kind of for the future.
We're bringing the old commodities into the new world.
Yeah.
It's still in its archaic phase of trading, so this should change.
Very interesting. All right, well, check it out. Thank you, Humayun, for joining us and explaining Mettalex for us.
Always a pleasure. Thank you very much.